inviting me to this very important conference. I had a pleasure to listen to the earlier speaker and what all he talk about the data, which is the talk of the town for every manufacturing industry today. Uh, my topic here, I'm going to talk about while we optimize the manufacturing, while we adopt the new solution, the disrupting technology in this world which is coming up. It helps to improve the bottom line, but simultaneously it helps to reduce the carbon emission, and which is a need of the hour. So we are in a very difficult kind of a situation in India today. Last year in January, I think just before the pandemic started, I was invited or was nominated by FICCI to speak in one parallel conference with the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland. And my talk was social innovations. Okay, how do innovations will bring the social upliftment while it also should make the business. And during the talk, some discussion came up, and they said, the India is the third largest emitter of CO2 in the world. And what are you guys are doing for that? I said, yes, we are third largest emitter of CO2 after US and China. But at the same time, if you look at the per capita CO2 emission, our rank is 158 in the world. So there are 157 countries ahead of us who emit more carbon per capita. But one gentleman in the crowd said, yeah, that's fine. What you say is wonderful. But then the glaciers don't understand whether it is coming from absolute or it is per capita. Said that's true. That is what is a challenge for us. I also told them that you people, when you were growing, maybe just go back 2 decades, 3 decades before, when the industrialization was happening in most of the developed countries today. Today, they are emitting 5 tons, 10 tons, 15 tons per capita of CO2. But maybe 20, 30 years back, when they were emitting same as India, nobody ever stopped you, or nobody ever criticized you, nobody ever asked you, you are putting more CO2 into the atmosphere, and which is not good for the our dear Earth. Now, when it is our time, where we have started developing, where we want to improve the standard of living, we aspire to be having the same standard of living as you, but we are now having a challenge. Everybody questions you. How are you going to hurt the environment by emitting the more CO2? So that's a big challenge, And I also quoted them example. I said I traveled in your trains for last 2 days in Switzerland, and at any given time I had not seen more than 15 people sitting in the 40 people compartment in your train. And you just come and see how the train runs in India. So, but that all examples are fine. But the fact is that we have to balance between the development, and also we have to manage the CO2 emission to save the environment, because in the absolute term, yes, we are third largest producer, but it can't stop our development, because we have a responsibility to improve the quality of life in our country. Basic minimum needs which are required, which I call the food on every table, shelter on every head, clean fuel at every house, and accessibility to the information and the data and the education. These are the minimum basic needs, and for which also we require a large amount of industrial growth in our country. So the solution is you have to build on the factories, but at the same time, you have to minimize the emission of your existing asset, your existing manufacturing facilities. And that is where the digital technology comes into a picture, because the progressive industries, they're doing whatever best possible they have done. There are large number of middle and small scale industry where they are nowhere in even in a basic optimization, but all will have to be brought into this digitization mode, and everybody will have to believe that it is not going to be expensive. Again, the challenge is that the people believe, if I'm going to spend the money on digitization, from where the payback will come. And that is where the biggest challenge, to convince the people that no digitization is ever going to be expensive if it is done in the right spirit and with the well understanding. So let me share you a couple of slides to just run through what is the environmental compulsions today and what are the digital solutions manufacturing should look into. Yeah. Yeah, is my screen visible? Yeah. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah,
it's visible. It's
yeah,
visible.
thank you. Thank you. So to this environmentally aware manufacturing, once again, thank you, Exito, for inviting, and the conference which you are conducting. Had it been physical conference, it would have been great. Hope that will happen pretty soon. But even in the virtual way, this is absolutely required for the development of our country. So this is just a disclaimer because a lot of information which has been sourced from the Google and other information sources, wherever this information is showed in the presentation, the source has been mentioned and the due credit has been given to the publisher of the information. Any instance of deviance from this should be considered as unintentional oversight and at the most an error of judgment. Yeah. So just look at this greenhouse gas emission. The blue thing is the CO2, which is the talk of the world today. And if you look at the total metric greenhouse gas generation, metric gigatons, and if you look at the industry, then the power, these are the two major things. Of course, the transport is also there, but transport is only 8 gigaton, but the industry and the power, if you account for it, it accounts for more than 50% of the entire GHG emission. And for our growth, it's like in India, as you know, there are almost 45% of the working population is engaged in agriculture, and which is produce only 14 or 15% of the GDP. The per capita income in agriculture is also just 41,000 rupees against the 120,000 rupees in manufacturing and 160,000-70,000 rupees in services. So it means that we have to migrate a good amount of agricultural manpower into the industry, because that's not a very highly skilled manpower, but that can work in industry. And that is precisely what happened in China and the US when they were growing. So bringing agriculture manpower into the mainstream to improve their quality of life, improve their earning per capita, the industrialization is absolutely necessary. And because India has badly missed the first cycle of industrialization, which happened in late 70s and early 80s in most of the countries. Now there are mega plants, mega manufacturing facilities existing around the world. And now entering for India into the mega manufacturing is always a much bigger challenge as compared to the other countries which had it. But then there are many unique features in India which can make it compete to the world. And I spent 34 years of my career in Reliance. And Reliance started this entire industrialization in maybe early 80s or more on the mid 90s and early 2000. And it has demonstrated even starting such a late as compared to the mega industries already existing across the world, they are competing. If you look at the refining business of the Reliance, that is giving the highest gross refining margin against any refinery in the world. So it's possible because of many unique advantages in India. And one of those advantages, of course, is a manpower asset. And second is building the economy of scale, because that's an opportunity. The technologies exist for that. And then bringing as much automation right from the project stage into the any project which is being taken in any sector. What happens to so many initiatives happening in the world? There is the solar coming up, the wind coming up. We talk about the electric vehicle. They say by 2030, entire India will be running with the electric vehicles. There is a biofuel. Lot many technologies are emerging. There is a ethanol which is being blended into the gasoline, which is made from the agriculture waste. So all these things coming up will continue. But if you look at this graph by what will happen till 2050, So the major focus is going to replace the coal with solar and wind energy, which is mainly in the power sector. There's also decline of oil, but not as much, even if 2050. And this is with the assumption that all the electric, all the four-wheeler, two-wheeler, or even the heavy vehicles will be running on the electric or hydrogen across the world and across India, which is not really a very easy task. It is easy said than done. But in spite of assuming all those factors, you still look at there's a huge consumption of oil and huge consumption of gas, which is going to continue for many sectors, and especially the chemical sector and the aviation sector, which is going to account for the maximum consumption of the oil in that area. And in those are the sector, again, as we have seen in the previous slide, are also responsible for large amount of emission. So the focus of the optimization of the plants and the asset to minimize the carbon emission is also very much required in that sector. Now we call it a VUCA world. What the VUCA world is? It's called a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. As I spoke, that there's going to be electrification of entire transport happening. There's going to be the hydrogen economy, which is going to rule the world. There are going to be the biofuel. I worked on a project called Algae to Oil, where you start from the seawater, take the seawater, grow algae on it, harvest the algae, and convert that into a crude oil. And there was a plant which I built. It was a pretty large plant, which was producing maybe half a barrel crude oil starting from the seawater. The challenge is technology is proven. Yes, end-to-end process can be proven. It was demonstrated, but the challenge, it was not economical. But some inventions come up tomorrow and that can make economical, and suddenly we'll see the run of Kutch is a green desert, and then you are making the crude oil there. So many of such breakthrough things are happening in the world. You want to convert entire waste into the fuel. Economy today, the fossil fuel, which is the cheapest source of the energy today, but the number of things happening across the world are not predictable when which technology will take over, and that is why we call it a complex world. Today, if you want to put up one refinery, if you want to put up a very large petrochemical plant, then suddenly, if you start doing the economics of next 20 years, what's going to be the world look like after 20 years, then this VUCA will tell you it is uncertain, it is complex. Your investment, the way it was very simple when I started my career, if the analysis of next 15 years of your economics for your plant was pretty simple. You know what is the demand growing in the world, what is the population growing, and how much standard of living improving, and how much demand will be required. But that's not true in the next 15, 20 years because of so many things happening. So what is required is a maximum energy efficiency. You need to conserve the resources with renewable fuel and water. And the biggest challenge is again the decarbonization, which we're talking about. If you look at the scenario here, if you continue business as usual, it can be 4 to 5 degree increase, which is not acceptable. Desirable is at least 1.5 degree. And the Paris Conference of Parties, which we said it should be around 2 and 2.5 degrees centigrade. But if you look at the current initiatives which are happening, and if those continue to happen with the same train, even achieving 1.5 degree is far from the target, far away from the target, which won't be possible. So what is required? The very large kind of industrial revolution, every sector. While one is you capturing the CO2 and storing it somewhere, at the same time minimizing the CO2 emission, that is going to be the most desired outcome for a country like us, where we have to build a new industry and we have to improve the standard of living of our people. This is just to let you know why many things didn't happen in the past. If you look at first industrial revolution, how many? It took 100 years just to mechanization. Then it was another 80 years for the mass production. Then it took another maybe 60, 70 years to moving from mass production to some kind of automation. But now this is the fourth industrial revolution, which is not going to wait that long. This is maybe just 5 years back, we never heard about artificial intelligence getting into my simple Aspen or some other modeling, which can be made much more efficient by putting AI into that. That was not even heard of 2 3 years back, and it has come. You don't know what all is going to come in next 3 or 4 years of time. The kind of disruptive technologies which are emerging, and this is some. Yeah, these are the value which is at stake, and if you look at the second column, we talk about the high maturity, high certainty, quantified digital initiative and technologies. So these are the technologies which we say are ready for adoption and ready for implementation. And if you look at these technologies, if those have been adopted, and I'm talking about oil and gas, I'm not talking about cement and many other industry where I'll show you some example. But if you look into just into an oil and gas, it talks about 1.6 to 1.9 trillion dollar, depending upon the adoption rate. And if you look at on the left side, we talk about the lowering emission, low reduction in water use is one part, and the lowering emission, which is worth $430 billion. It is depending upon the whatever carbon tax which is being proposed. That is the potential exists for the digital technologies. See the environmental benefit anticipated, 1,300 million tons of CO2. Water saving is also on one part, but major is 1,300 million tons of CO2 reduction, which is simply possible. And the spill in the upstream section, the oil spill which happens, which is to the tune of 230,000 barrels of oil per year, which gets spilled while the exploration, that also can be saved by this technology. So what are those? Digital asset life cycle management, autonomous operation and robots, remote operation center, predictive maintenance. A lot was spoken about the predictive maintenance in this conference, and the connected workers. And as I said, high maturity and high certainty. And fortunately, my experience goes in my previous job in Reliance. Many of these things, I will not say they have matured to the level or they're performing to the level which is desired, but they have been introduced. They have been introduced. People have started thinking about it. And in some areas, the benefits of all these disruptive things, which I'll not call disruptive now, it may be disruptive few years back, all this technology which have entered into the manufacturing have started showing the results. If the plant shut down when I started my career, maybe till 20 years of my career, there used to be something used to be called annual shutdown. There's something used to be called a budget for an unplanned shutdown. We were anticipating there will be 5-6 unplanned failures, and it was budgeted. It was budgeted that so much production loss because of unplanned failure. That was the situation maybe as early as 10-15 years back now. Today, in the better operating plan with all these digital adoptions, there's nothing like annual shutdown. The shutdown happens once in 4 years. And that is also because of some of the statutory requirements which are required to be made, and some critical safety inspections which are required to be done. So it's a cycle of change. Just imagine the shutdown happening from 1 year to 4 years, the amount of EBITDA which organization is going to get, and amount of the emission which is going to save out of that. Circular and collaborative ecosystem, 3D printing, which is recent Pricewaterhouse survey shows when they surveyed 100 manufacturing company, they found 11% penetration of additive manufacturing or 3D printing, what we call, has already happened. So you don't have to keep expensive inventories into the plant, because it can be printed on demand and supplied, and that also is becoming a reality. Beyond the barrel, omni-channel, thanks to something which might have happened better into this COVID with so many negatives happening. There's lots of experience of marketing on your mobile or the computer, which people have started doing it. Energizing the new energy, where we say that can you have a pump where you got a biodiesel, you got a bioethanol, you got a fossil fuel, you got a hydrogen, and then consumers should choose which kind of energy they want to put in. So all this, as I said, technology-wise, all these options of the new energies exist. Only converting into the economical and also managing the logistic, and especially in a country like India, which is a challenge. But then look at many progresses which we have done. It's certainly not impossible. And this total value at stake, as I said, is 1.9 trillion. So this is the use of drone and robotics. I'll not spend much time, but then uh, this has been the reality. If you look at the flare in a chemical industry, which is a 90 or 100-meter tall tower, there was in the past either people have to climb to inspect it, or you have to lay down the entire flare and then again erect it back. But now your drones can go and do the inspection. Nothing of those kind of required. There are the catalyst loading in chemical industries happen under the inert atmosphere, where oxygen content has to be lower than 3%. There have been many accidents that happened in the past on account of that. Now the technology is a reality where the robotics go and robot goes and load the catalyst for you. Augmented and virtual reality, operation information technology revolution, same way the operation technology revolution. So in all these areas, the progress and the optimizations which are happening, and the augmented and virtual reality that helps you to people walk through the plant and get trained. So today, if you are commissioning the plant, and with all digital things happening, still the people are going to remain the important asset, especially when it comes to a chemical and refining kind of industry, because of the huge stake on the safety or huge stake on the any kind of large failure resulting into a fire or accident kind of thing. So the training of the people, which is very, very critical. And as I said, the plants don't stop for 4 years. 4 years, you cannot wait a person taking an independent charge of the plant for 4 years. So then this augmented and virtual reality, and this also help you to build the project right at the first time. There is no rework involved. There is no modifications required during the construction of the plant. So many of those things are possible through this evolutions. Digital twin, I will not, this is every single company is talking about it, but what all asset information model, steady state model, the process and equipment reliability model, people competency model, everything brought together. And then you have only 3 or 4 platform, HSE platform, operation platform, service platform, and the competency platform. And all this, only the 4 platforms driving the entire organization. And that also help you to get connected processes, connected assets, and the connected people, which is the need of the hour. Predictability of end-to-end process, performing with the licensor expertise, and then superior equipment performance, because 90% of the equipment failure happened on account of a wrong operation of the processes, either the wrong feedstock or the wrong manual error. Those result into the asset damage to the largest extent, maybe more than 90%, I will say. So whenever the process and the assets are connected, and at the same time, the people whose knowledge transfer and the competency management across the generation happens, they know which abnormality into the process can cause my asset damage. And when it is supported by the digital things, the people get alarm on their mobile. Maybe some parameter which we're talking about, which will be investigated in a thorough root cause analysis, which will be available on mobile, saying that this contamination in your feed has increased, coming on my device, which tells me, and that also gives me the information, this has the following hazards, and they are all connected. What will happen to what your equipment, it also will tell you what action your process is automatically going to take you, and where the manual intervention will be required for you to manage. So this is the reality today. But if you look at majority of the Indian assets, and I'm connected with one US company now, for they're in the business of benchmarking. So I talk to all large corporates in India today, and then I look their maturity level of Internet of Things or the digitization. There is a long way to go, and there's a huge amount of penetration which is required in this area. And what is more important is the changing of a mindset. This just was an example of a cement plant. I will not spend. This has been sourced from one of the open forum report from the McKinsey. And if you look at the black, advanced process control, this is what the industries are doing today, and they're pretty happy with that. They said, yes, we have got the manual after, we have got the hardware updates, we have done. We have got the advanced process control, real-time optimization, models which are measuring the real-time performance. Everything has been done, and say what else is required. And this is what is demonstrated here, what else is required. And this is coming the artificial intelligence. When it looks into the model by which you are operating the plant. And then in most of the industries today, I don't know how many participants are from the manufacturing, 60 to 70% of the data which is unutilized, And why it is unutilized? Because now people do not know what to do with that data. And when you bring this AI, it will tell you what to do with the data. And when those models are modified, you just see the result where it can go. Well, from 109, which was showing, it can go up to another 9 to 10% improvement in your productivity, which is promising. So now, where are the inhabitants now? Normally, as I said, large number of industry which I'm in coming in contact, they have a desire to do it, but they are not so much proactive in doing it because of following some of the things which are there. There's a data security regulation. I was hearing the earlier presentation and I learned a lot about it. There are so many solutions which are available where people really don't have to worry about that. Then the lack of standardization. And this is one of the things which is where I'll just take half a minute to tell you. There are the good technology providers, they get into the boardroom of some company. Their chairman of the company gets convinced, yeah, this looks fantastic and I must adopt it. Chairman will pass on the instruction to the hierarchy saying that, hey, this looks wonderful, why we should not do it? And because it is coming from the top, the solution gets fast implemented. And by the time it reaches to the ground level, then you find that I don't have enough data. I don't have a right data. 60% of my data has not been collected. And now what result this technological tools or the technology which is giving me are not reliable because my data is not reliable. So I always propose when you adopt, this is absolutely required, but get a bottom-up approach. You see that what should be the bare minimum requirement at the ground level ready for me to get into the integrated platform or the digital solution. Absence of end-to-end digital system, again I said connected processes, connected assets, that's required. And the culture and mindset, as I said, if anyone says that digital adoption is expensive, then I will say they do not know how to do it, or they have not understood the features of it. Any digital expansion, digital adoption is never expensive. I give you the example of catalyst loading by robot. In the manual loading, it used to take 10 days for loading. Robot can load it in 2 days. 8 days shutdown reduction for a large company, it amounts for millions of dollars. And the cost of the robot becomes the peanut there. So that is to be understood. Training of a talent. And again, the challenge for the people is how do we get away with the current workforce, which does not have an ability to adopt to the digital thing. There had been a lot of discussion happening on that area, and there are a lot of solutions also exist. You don't need too much of large workforce for bringing this tomorrow's technology, or even can get away with a little bit training of the existing people. And the negative publicity, they say about oil and gas could drive the millennial toward greener option and not make oil and gas as a green option. So there's a lot of negative publicity, and again the cyber security, which is that. So my recommendation is the last slide. So you make a digital priority for senior executive, and the most important is a drive a culture of innovation and technology. It's a very, very important, the culture of innovation technology. If you can buy a most expensive, most modern mobile phone for yourself, because you are adopting, you say there are many features available, why not same thing happen into the assets or the plant which you are running? Invest in human capital and development program, promote new digital thinking. Again, that's a part of the building a culture. And the digital capability, it is never a one-time activity, because the way disruption is happening across the world, this by the time, if you don't make your product absolute, somebody else will make it anyway. So you have to continue to make your adoption absolute, and by adopting the newer and newer things, and reform company for data architecture. And this is the most important part. Most of the companies' data architecture is absolutely bad today, absolutely bad. And that is the first thing which is required to be done. Invest in collaborative ecosystem, use partnership and platform that work in sharing the economy. And this is also happening on much larger. This is not happening, but required to be happened on much larger scale. So I think, thank you very much. I don't know how much time I have taken or how much time I have exceeded. But thanks once again giving me an opportunity, and I hope you enjoyed whatever small things I had to share in a available time. Thank you.
Absolutely.